Hello, Roderick Gibbons with another edition of Perspectives. And today's topic is probably outside of the normal financial planning. It's about having those tough conversations. And today we're bringing in someone who specializes in those tough conversations, Nora Ludviksen, and with the table, the mediation table. And we hope to get out today some talking points, some outlines of how to address these tough conversations. Nora's going to give you some things that you can take home with you, and I'm going to follow up with why it's so important when it comes to financial planning. And some of you may say, hey, financial planning is about the numbers, but if you don't have conversations with your partner, family, around the various topics, goals, and objectives, then you never get to the point of getting to your end result, which is an effective, integrated financial plan. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nora to talk about, how to have better conversations.
Thank you, Robert. So we welcome anyone to come and join us here and hear about some keys to a good conversation. It's interesting to know what brings you to talk about those topics, what you hope or need to find out. Maybe you've attempted a conversation with your significant other, someone you're living with, group of people living together in a home, or you're engaged to be married, or you are married, and there are important conversations to be had about money, which we like to refer to as the most intimate detail of your life. And so because it's so intimate, it's hard to broach. So perhaps you've attempted those conversations or gotten partway through some of those conversations, or perhaps you have a lot of trepidation about broaching those conversations. So what we can know is that there's probably a dilemma there to broach that conversation. And why is that? And how do you cross what a colleague of mine called the threshold of excuses, right? So I've got, yeah, we need to talk about that, but I've got this to do, that to do. So how do you kind of cross that threshold? So it's really important, and I have a list of really simple, deceptively simple keys to having a good conversation. And those start off with really knowing what your purpose is. Why do you need to have this conversation? What is the topic at one level, and why does it matter to you at another level? And maybe what your purpose is different from your partner's purpose. And so that makes it a little bit more complex. So getting that thought going through your head and really evaluating for yourself before you even begin is going to get you started in the conversation. So beyond that, defining your purpose, you need to think about your motivation too. And evaluate your thoughts and feelings about the conversation also beforehand. So there's sort of an inner conversation that has to happen before you start having an interactive conversation. And then maybe the way that you talk, people have different styles. Some people are avoidant when things get a little difficult. Some people are collaborative and go right to, how do we work this out? You might be accommodating. You might be compromising, or you might be very competitive. I want my goals met above yours. So sorting that out and figuring out each other's motivations and the way you communicate is really helpful. And then think about what triggers strong emotion for you, because money sure brings it out. So, especially around money, and that can go back to when you were very young, or how you observed other people handling money, or talking about money, or arguing about money. So then how do you begin? And so on the list of keys to a good conversation, you'll see some very simple steps, but all of them have a lot of meaning. Today I just wanted to talk a little bit about that broaching, that crossing that threshold. And so if you have considered what your purpose is, and you have prepared, you may need to prepare and practice that very first opening line, which might be, Roderick, I think we really need to talk about how we're going to be able to afford that vacation. And could we set aside some time to do that? And so you want to invite with clarity, and you might need to practice even that opening line. There's something I'd like us to talk about. Simple as that seems. And then you invite with clarity, and you say clearly what it is that you are wanting to talk about, where you'd like to do it, when you'd like to do it, and that gets you started. It's really important to meet, I think, in a neutral, comfortable place. And all of those words are important. So that it's neutral, which means it's not a place where you usually fight, or you usually retreat to, or something like that. But really it's a place where you can be comfortable and talk, and set aside enough time. So once you are gathered, then, and let me back up and say that a neutral, comfortable place can be different for each person. So again, you want to, when you invite, say, I was thinking we could go down to the coffee house on the corner and talk for about an hour on Sunday afternoon. How do you feel about that? And make sure the other person says, well, you know, that would be really stressful for me because something's coming up Sunday afternoon. So then you begin actually the process of having a conversation and making decisions right from the very start, which is about where and when and what will be comfortable for both of us to have a conversation. So those are just some starting points.
Well, I think these are great for whether they're conversations about money. We are all in the Northwest. I've had some very interesting conversations on financial planning when it comes to finding housing, having kids. These are all in the same vein of what may be, something that's pretty blasé for one person could be very emotional, and you really want to be able to have a foundation to have these conversations, because I think it's really it really impedes some of the progress you can make when it comes to making progress, whether it's a financial plan, family plan, and even in the workspace. We find this is a skill that obviously Nora specializes in, but you'd be surprised how many times we don't have great conversations with our coworkers, with other vendors, our superiors, our subordinates. So we think that this is important. Related to financial planning, where I find this really starts to come to a head is when we start to get into conversations of, well, let me back up. Financial planning is three things. It's understanding what you have, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. It's that simple. The second step, which is very difficult to kind of, just automate, is the articulation of what you want to do outside of just retirement. And I work specifically with families, and those conversations, I see a lot of new conversations where two people who maybe have been together, whether it's 2 years, 20 years, I've had couples that have been together 30 years, really start to kind of look at each other, and you can see on their face, I didn't know that. And so it's really a conversation that I think is not very common outside of just dropping some ideas throughout time and really having a framework to come together. What does it look like? What does that look like for us together? But as Nora mentioned earlier, it's a combination of values, and I don't want to downplay that. And I myself have a worksheet that many couples go through on the value system, sayings that you may hear and abide to, and may not even know that these values either align or they conflict between two people. So it's important to understand where those fall. But when it comes to putting this all together, it's really important for people to feel like they can speak about what they want, and they can, feel like there's a win in the conversation for them, and it's not just a concession, or feel like they're really giving up their dreams. It's really, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that this is all about working together. And then the other thing I think that's important to have difficult conversations, and maybe Nora, if you can chime in, is we start to get into areas where it is a little bit grim. We talk about, people moving on, death. When it comes to life expectancy and, health, and then when it comes to products like life insurance, not a lot of people like to talk about, their demise. So it's important to have some talking points and some tools in your toolbox in order to address these needs. The earlier you address them, I think the more effective your plan is. So maybe, Nora, you can talk about some of these areas that are like death or something like that when it comes to family dynamics.
One thing I wanted to comment about what you just said is one of my favorite quotes is George Bernard Shaw. He said, "The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has happened." And so we often have conversations where we think we've had a conversation, we think we've made decisions, and walk away, and then you're saying something goes wrong and you don't know why. Well, something didn't get really pinned down. Something really didn't get talked about to the depth that it needed to. And especially, as you said, in those difficult facing your mortality, facing your plans, and the plans that you're going to make for yourself, for your spouse, for your family, for your animals, for your colleagues, if it's a business situation that you're talking about, transition planning or succession planning. Those are things that are really hard to broach because we're all very busy in our lives and have no thought that we're going to need to be prepared. But we do a lot of if-then scenarios. So we can look at the best case scenario, and then we can gently start walking into what are some of the other scenarios that might be so great. You may have a plan with a colleague, let's say, to have a business with them for the next 20 years. So you can make a plan for that. But then you also have to investigate, well, what happens if I have one client who talks about the proverbial bus. And then we said, well, there's the proverbial bus is getting hit by the bus, but there's also what if someone gets on a bus and just goes somewhere else? So we can talk and make our way into those more sad conversations, but also similarly there is a lot of care and consideration and respect and love that goes into preparing and planning for when you are not there to do your piece of the relationship, whether that is personally, in terms of your home, in terms of your finances.
One of the topics I talk about when we talk about family financial planning is taking care of our parents who are, in our mind, are always youthful, and we think about them living forever. But the reality is that estate planning, while it's probably not the top of our day-to-day thought, it definitely is something that comes into play when it comes to financial planning. Whether it's something very simple as a will, powers of attorney from a financial perspective, or healthcare directives. And then obviously we get into how are you passing on your wealth. And it's not just about how much you make, how much you keep, it's how do you leave a legacy. Maybe Nora, you can give some thoughts on how people can start to have those conversations with their parents when it comes to their situation.
Yeah, elder and adult family mediation is a piece of what I do, and it's a very interesting process because usually someone in the family doesn't want to, or thinks they don't want to, or thinks someone else doesn't want to have these important conversations. And so sometimes I think that you can find yourself in an urgent situation, and then you probably really do need some support to gather everyone and have them come together and make sure everyone is heard, everyone's listened to, everyone has a voice, but ultimately you're paying attention to the well-being of the elder as your primary focus. So everyone has a perspective, and everyone has value to bring to those kind of conversations. if it's not an urgent situation, but you're saying, it's kind of time to talk to mom or to dad or to both of them about some things, you notice some changes, you start being worried about their well-being. Those conversations, sometimes you can do them just a small conversation at a time. So it might just be, hey, let's talk about, I noticed you had some difficulty finding your way home on your route the other day. Has that been going on very much? Tell me about it. How are you feeling about that? So there are ways of having small conversations that can accumulate and get you to those bigger conversations. And I've seen people who really felt like there was no way my mom or my dad will ever have that conversation with me, or this brother or that sister. And when you really take a very attentive, methodical way, which this keys to a good conversation is a little shorthand of, it's a way to really broach those conversations, initiate them, make sure everyone is heard. I think the biggest part of these conversations of success is that everyone feels listened to, everyone feels heard. That's key.
We're just going to pause for a second. Do you guys have any kind of, whether it's questions, comments? We feel this is a fairly, broad topic that it'd be hard pressed to say, oh, I never had a problem with difficult conversations. I don't think I will ever hear that, or maybe I have, but we think it's applicable. So do you guys have any thoughts out there as far as things that come across your conversations with people in your family or in your workforce? Or yes.
How do you deal with the avoidant types when you're more confrontational?
Well, I think I do a whole series of training on conflict styles. And everybody has a tendency, like if you say one person's avoidant and one's confrontational, the skill is to learn some of the other ones. And then to say which one should apply to which situation. Because being avoidant can be a really smart strategy if you are in danger, let's say. If this is a dangerous situation and I need to walk away. Avoidant can be a really good strategy if you need some time to think. If you process more slowly your decision making. So none of those have any judgment on them, but it's really figuring out and being upfront with what's going on. So if you're avoidant and you're facing a confrontational person whose tendency is to confrontation, you might even say something like, if this is appropriate for that situation, you might even say something like, this is the point at which I would usually want to step away, but I'm really interested in finishing this conversation. But I feel like things are getting a little hot and heated. Could we come back to this in then 15 minutes, next week, 2 hours, whatever, and each of us think about it and come back again and focus on and define exactly where you're going to start. So if things get heated, one of the sort of seems simple and obvious, not so easy to do, is to really say what's going on right now for you and that it's not working. And either could we talk about this in a different way? Or remember when we had that really great collaborative conversation? I'd love for this to go that way. How can we get there? And if it means taking some time to get there, that's fine too. Does that help?
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a particular conversation in mind? Either something you're thinking about having or something you tried that didn't work that you'd like a little feedback on?
Folks in denial, like more in denial of the reality, right? I think my parents, right, they're prepared for retirement. And it's something they kind of acknowledge that that's a problem.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about that, or shall I do it on that?
Well, just
Okay, we'll do both. So unprepared for retirement, and you're seeing some signs of that, and you have some worries about that. So again, it really depends on the nature of the conversation, but that making sure you find a good time that you've had experience in the past has been a time when that person or those people have been receptive to a conversation. So not in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner or, but hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. When would be a good time to do that? And then think about and prepare what you want to say and what is the message you're trying to get across, your concerns and your cares, your worries and so forth, and be able to just say those really clearly, and that might mean practicing, if you need to do that. As far as someone's in denial, I think that inquiring about how are you feeling about your retirement, or how are you feeling about your, whatever defines retirement for them, and asking questions is a really good way to start the conversation too, and sometimes even better, so that you're the one listening and learning, and you might discover they're just as worried, but they have other reasons not to bring it up. So I think denial is maybe something that means we're just not talking about it, right? It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means we're uncomfortable. And you could say, I know this might be really uncomfortable at first, but I really want to make sure that you have the best life in the coming years that you can. I would love to talk to you. So whatever the nature of your conversation is kind of where you enter, and if you enter at that more vulnerable, interested level, rather than at the practical level, I think that can be a way to get to the practical level. And then you can say, and I met this great guy, Roderick, and I think maybe we can sit down with him and just hear how he might be able to help you get there, when you get to that part of the conversation. Does that help?
Yeah, as a financial planner, retirement's always, sometimes, well, not always, it's a sensitive word, and I often use the word, what are the next steps? Because retirement is not where it was 30 years ago, where people just sit on a rocket chair. There's semi-retirement, there's activity, there's income, there's a lot of moving parts to that. I would probably inquire about what their thoughts are on the next step. To gather kind of what are some of the moving parts in their decision-making process. And the other thing I would probably gather is in other aspects of their lives, are they the type that, are they proactively making plans? And if they are, I would use an analogy of, if you're making plans here, how does that relate to your retirement picture? I don't know if that's helpful or not. But again, retirement's a very sensitive word. Another word I tend to also be very sensitive to is budget. I use the word cash flow analysis to kind of, help them understand. But everyone needs to kind of understand what are the next steps and how they're going to execute. Great. Any other questions or areas that you feel are difficult for conversations? Well, we're going to wrap up. I think the takeaway is you have some resources at your disposal. As far as RainierView Advisors, we have a series that's focused on life events. One of them is, transitioning from a single to a married life. And we call it Marriage and Money, Planning It Forever After. And we have a variety of components that include getting over the budget conversation, as people would like to say, what are the moving parts for plans, but it helps people get on the same page in order to make effective decisions going forward.
Sure, and I'm a facilitative mediator with the table Mediation, and I work with elders and adult siblings, bringing people to the table to talk about big life changes and how to prepare for those. So if you do get stuck in a situation where it isn't really working, a suggestion might be maybe we could have a facilitated family meeting, and that can be as casual or as formal as it needs to be to suit you. Welcome you to the table.
And again, the point of perspectives are for you to have information, resources, so you can make better decisions. Thank you for coming.